What is going on, everyone? My name is Andy. Welcome back to another FPL video. In this one, it's some of my early thoughts ahead of the Game Week 26 deadline. So I'm going to go through some key players that I want to talk about, look at assistant managers for Game Week 26, then quickly talk about my own team as well. So let's get into it. So let's start with Nwaneri. Not often you get a 4.5 million attacker from Arsenal that looks likely to start most games, but that's exactly what we have here. A 9-pointer at the weekend, 1 assist, 1 clean sheet, and 3 bonus points. Pretty decent at that price point. The fixtures coming up are okay. They're not amazing. Like West Ham at home in 26 is pretty decent, but then it's Forest away in 27. Man United away in 28 doesn't look so bad at the moment either, to be fair. And then Chelsea at home in 29. That's another defence that probably have a few mistakes in them. So on paper, I think Forest away, Man United away, Chelsea at home usually wouldn't look so good. But at the moment, I don't think it's that terrible. And at 4.5 million, you've got to set your expectations. We're not expecting Salah levels of output at that price point. So I think he's pretty decent to pick up if you need someone less than 5 million. In terms of the minutes that I think people might be worried about, at this point, I think you need both Martinelli and Saka to be back fit for Nwaneri to start missing out game time. Because the lineup at the weekend was Sterling, Trossard and Nwaneri. And when Sterling went off, it was Merino that came on. And obviously Nwaneri stayed on. So I think even if Martinelli was back, for example, it'd be him on the left, Trossard through the middle, and Nwaneri on the right. I think you need both Martinelli and Saka to be back fit before he starts losing minutes. So he's not a season-long hold, but we don't need him for that long anyway. And if we look at the FPL page, they've got Martinelli to come back on the 9th of March, and I think Saka is exactly the same. Yeah, 9th of March, which is basically Game Week 28. I'm not fully convinced both of them will be back fit playing in the starting 11 in Game Week 9. So I think we will get Nwaneri for Game Week 29 as well, which is obviously a blank, but not for Arsenal. And then you've got the international break between 29 and 30. So I think from April onwards, Nwaneri becomes a lot more of a risk. And if you're someone that's looking to wildcard in 31 or 32, and you need him to play in 30, just know there is some risk there. Hopefully, he'll keep playing all the way through, but that is definitely not a guarantee. So I think you definitely get him for the next 3 game weeks. I suspect he'll play in 29 as well. Beyond that, there is definitely some risk there. But for 4.5, it may well be worth it. So next up, we got Marmoush. He went up in price last night from 7 to 7.1 million, which isn't all that surprising after he scored a hat-trick. For anyone that hasn't bought him in yet, I really don't think there's any rush. It's literally Liverpool at home in Game Week 26, one of the toughest fixtures that Man City will have all season. Yes, I think Man City can score in that game, and they probably will. But I don't think it's going to be another 4-0 like it was against Newcastle. So I wouldn't panic about bringing Marmoush in this week. Afterwards, the fixture run gets a little bit better. Spurs away in 27, then Forest away, Brighton at home, Leicester at home, all the way up till Game Week 30. Maybe you look at him then. But if you've got a decent forward line this week, I would just stick with it. In terms of the minutes, in the league so far, he started every single game. So 73 minutes against Chelsea, every single game since he came in anyway. 71 minutes against Arsenal, 75 minutes against Newcastle. Obviously, the game was pretty comfortable at that point, so there was no need to keep him on. It's worth pointing out that he didn't start the game against Real Madrid in the Champions League. Grealish started on the left instead. Now, Grealish has an injury right now, so presumably Marmoush's minutes will be pretty good. But when he gets back fit, is there a guarantee that Marmoush will start every single game? Possibly. He started all 3 in the league so far, but there has to be some doubts there. I feel like this is a conversation we have with every single Man City attacker pretty much ever since Pep Guardiola took over. You have to know there is some risk by bringing someone like Marmoush in that either he won't start the odd game, especially when he's so new to the team, or he will continue to get subbed early. I think the conversation really is not that he's a bad option, it's whether there's a better option out there. And for Wolves, for example, for 6.8 million, so 0.3 million less, you've got someone like Cunha, who plays 90 minutes pretty much every single game. And when you look at the Wolves fixtures, it's Bournemouth away in 26, followed by Fulham at home, Everton at home, Southampton away in blank Game Week 29. And if you want to carry him forward from that, it's West Ham at home in 30, Ipswich away in 31, Spurs at home in 32. The fixture run for Wolves is just good for quite a while. You've got a nailed-on player, probably on penalties as well. I can't really find too many good reasons to spend 0.3 million more on Marmoush, other than the fact he's a huge differential right now. And in that Man City team, it is difficult not to score goals when you get the minutes. I just think as a longer term pick, you're all like basically with Cunha, I don't ever check the Wolves team sheet. Unless there's a injury we haven't heard about, he's always going to start. With someone like Marmoush, I'm checking that Man City team sheet every time it comes out, which tells me I'm not as confident about his minutes. So he could do really well, and I'm not saying you shouldn't buy him, but there's no rush to do it this week. And longer term, I think Cunha is a better pick. So unfortunately for Amad Diallo, Man United and Amad Diallo owners in FPL, he is out for the season. We didn't find out until after the Game Week 25 deadline. It's a bit annoying, but these things happen. You've just got to deal with it. One player you could move to is Nwaneri, who I already spoken about, but I see him as a short-term option for the next 3 to 4 game weeks. Once Martinelli and Saka get back fit, Nwaneri's minutes will definitely go down. If you've got the cash, which most Amad owners will have, I would just buy a Bournemouth midfielder instead. I think longer term, the minutes are mostly going to be better. And also, I think the fixtures are probably better as well. Like short term, you've got Wolves at home in 26, followed by Brighton away, Spurs away in 27-28. It's Brentford at home in 29. And after the blank, it's Ipswich at home, West Ham away, Fulham at home. And I've said this before, Bournemouth players pretty much fit in with whichever chip strategy you're going for. If you're free hitting in 29, obviously you can load up on Bournemouth versus Brentford at home, but they still got good fixtures before and afterwards. And it's quite likely, although not guaranteed, that because of the FA Cup, they will double in 33 as well. So if you're free hitting in 29, good fixtures before, and then you carry them for the good fixtures and the double afterwards, even if you're looking to wildcard in 30 or 31, you've got Wolves, Brighton, Spurs, Brentford beforehand, they're still worth bringing in. So I would definitely go for Utara, Kluivert or Semenyo before I bought Nwaneri in, unless you just want to go for the big differential, which absolutely is no issue whatsoever. I think with Bournemouth players, it is also worth considering their longer term minutes, depending on what your chip strategy is. Tavernier is back now. He played 23 minutes against Southampton, 24 against Liverpool. At the moment, the Kluivert, Utara, Semenyo, Brooks forward line is working pretty nicely. But we have to remember that before injury, Tavernier was playing quite a lot, so he might force his way back into the team at some point. Looking at how they lined up against Southampton, like Tavernier could just play on the right instead of Brooks, or he could come in on the left and Semenyo could go to the right. Both of those players can play either side, but at some point Evan Nielsen will be back. So then Utara's got to go somewhere as well. So if you're looking, I've said this before, long-term minutes, like you're looking all the way down to 33, Semenyo is probably your best bet. He plays 90 minutes pretty much every single week. Kluivert, I think, is their number 10 that will start every game pretty much, but I think he'll get subbed earlier and earlier the more players they get back fit. But he's on penalty, so I would probably take him right now in the short term. And then Utara playing as the number 9 is great up until Evan Nielsen is back. At the moment on the FPL page, they've got it as an unknown return date. I think once we get past the international break, we might see him getting more and more minutes. So I think minutes-wise, it's probably Semenyo, long-term this is, Semenyo, then Kluivert, then Utara. But right now, it's hard to ignore the player that's playing as the number 9. And Utara is one of the best options I think you can go for at the moment for less than 5.5. So basically, long and the short of this is, I'd probably go for Kluivert at 6 million if you can afford it. But if you've got Amad, who's currently 5.5, you might have picked him up a bit cheaper. I would not be going out of my way to find the money to get Kluivert. I would just go for Utara at 5.1 instead. For my team, I'm probably going to do Rodgers to Utara this week. I'll speak about it a little bit later on. I think he's a great option. Semenyo, because he hasn't had the returns of Utara or Kluivert recently, has kind of been forgotten about. But he is the guy that just plays 90 every week, and his underlying stats are pretty good as well. He's just underwhelmed a little bit in terms of returns over the season. But actually, his recent returns have probably been going under the radar a little bit. From game week 17 against Man United when he scored, up until this Southampton game, he's got 3 goals and 4 assists. So 7 returns since game week 17 is not bad. So I think all 3 options are really good. I would probably buy Utara if you haven't got the money for Kluivert. Otherwise, I just take the penalty taker. So if you're looking for a new assistant manager this week, who are the best options to go for? If you're looking at teams with no table bonus, the best 2 are probably Arsenal versus West Ham at home and Bournemouth versus Wolves at home. Arteta is 1.5 million, Iraola is 1.1. Between the 2, I'd probably lean more towards Arsenal just because of how good their defence is. So even though they've got a lot of attacking injuries right now, they don't need to score many goals to win games. So I'd probably lean more towards Arsenal, but there's really not that much in it. If you had 1.1 million to spend, I would just get Iraola. I wouldn't find an extra 0.4 to buy Arteta instead. With the table bonus games, There's 6 in total this week as it stands. The best 3 are probably Leicester versus Brentford at home, Palace versus Fulham away, and Ipswich versus Spurs at home. I've put an asterisk next to that Palace versus Fulham game because currently Fulham are in 8th place and therefore it's a table bonus match. If Villa beat Liverpool on Wednesday, they will go into 8th place, Fulham will drop to 9th, and therefore it won't be a table bonus game anymore. If Villa draw or lose to Liverpool, it will be a table bonus game. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no chance that Villa beat Liverpool, but it could happen, right? And there's no price changes or injuries or suspensions to worry about with managers, so just don't make the transfer early. If Villa don't beat Liverpool, I think a lot of people will target Crystal Palace. And I think between them, Leicester and Ipswich, right, they are the best team. I don't think anyone is disputing that. But Fulham are not pushovers, especially at home. Like, they just beat Forest. There's a reason that Fulham are in 8th place. And obviously with table bonus, even if you get a draw, that's still pretty good points, right? It's like 8+. So it's not a huge concern. But it's not a guarantee that Palace will go and get that draw there. So I think that probably is the one to target as it stands. But the way people are talking about it is if it's a foregone conclusion that Palace will get a result there. And I'm not sure that's the case. And a lot of people are looking at Palace's away form. And it has been pretty good recently. Man United, these are the games they've won last 5. Man United away, West Ham away, Leicester away. They drew against Bournemouth, and then they beat Brighton and they beat Ipswich. So 5 of the last 6 they've won, and the other one they drew. So they have done really well. But you go back further, like it's a draw against Villa, a draw against Wolves, a loss to Forest, a loss to Everton, a draw against Chelsea, a loss to Brentford. Like a lot of the away games they've had recently have been a bit easier. But to be fair, they haven't lost many of them. So I do understand it, right? You hope for the win, and if you get a draw, that's probably good enough. So I do quite like Crystal Palace. And let's be clear about this. You're not going to get many games this season where it's a table bonus game and it's like a guaranteed win. There's a reason they put the extra points on offer to make you take that risk. And that's what it is with any of these teams. So I do quite like Palace. I think with Leicester versus Brentford at home, the Brentford defence is definitely susceptible to conceding. My worry is that the Leicester defence is as well. And when you've got Mbeumo and Visser who have played so well this season, I'm not sure I can see Leicester getting a result there necessarily. And people will talk about Brentford's away form, but actually they've been fine recently when the fixtures have got a bit better, right? They've just beat West Ham away, they beat Palace away, and they also beat Southampton away. So they've had easier fixtures. All of a sudden their away form looks a bit better. So I'm not sure. Like, just putting my assistant manager on a promoted team like Leicester, it just doesn't feel right. And Ipswich versus Spurs, we can all see Ange Postecoglou losing that game after beating Man United. But I think Spurs are better than their table position says. I really do. And they're starting to get some players back now. I mean, they've just lost Anzo in defence. I don't know how long he's going to be out for, which is a bit of a concern. But I'm just not sure I would want to trust Ipswich. So I think right now, as it stands, it probably is Palace versus Fulham away, the better option. But there is part of me just thinks take a home game. Like, just go for Leicester and Ipswich and hope for the best. Like, as long as you get a draw, you're probably okay. Just quickly on the other games that are table bonus. Wolves versus Bournemouth. I just think Bournemouth are too strong. West Ham versus Arsenal, same thing. The other one is... What is it? I can't remember what it is now. I'm sure there was 6. Oh, yeah, Southampton versus Brighton. There's no way I'm trusting Southampton. Like, people will look at Brighton maybe as a bit hit or miss. Southampton are terrible. There's no way I would go there. So for me, it's one of Leicester, Palace, Ipswich. Right now, it's probably Crystal Palace. So I'm just going to run through some really early thoughts for my own team. So in goal, it's Jordan Pickford against Man United at home. My back 3 is Gabriel against West Ham at home, Anderson versus Palace at home, and Trent versus Man City away. I do have Mykolenko on the bench against Man United at home. I am pretty tempted to play him ahead of Anderson. I need to give that a bit more thought. But the way Man United are playing right now, I'm not convinced they will score a huge amount of goals against Everton, and it is an away game. Like, if I had Fernandes, I wouldn't be in a panic. But as someone that's got the choice of Mykolenko versus Anderson, it is something I need to give a bit more thought to. Gabriel's obviously fine. I also think Trent is fine as well. As long as he comes through the Villa game with no injuries, he's almost certainly going to start. Well, he is going to start the Man City game, right? There's no questions about that. Then it's Newcastle at home and Southampton at home before the blank in 29. Some people are talking about the fact that Trent might get rotated in that Southampton game because it's around Champions League matches. But I think there is a chance he'll start and just come off early. Like, he hasn't been benched for a Premier League game when he's been fit so far. So I think I want to give that more time. I don't want to rush into a decision to sell Trent, and it doesn't really open anything up for me this week, so he's going to stay. Midfield is Palmer, Villa away, Rodgers, Chelsea at home, Salah, Man City away, currently my captain, Mbeumo, Leicester away, and Nwaneri against West Ham at home. Palmer going nowhere. I know he's not been as good as we've come to expect in terms of his output recently, but it's Southampton at home and Leicester at home soon. There's no way he's going anywhere. Rodgers to Utara is probably my move this week. And I'll come on to assistant manager in a minute, but Rodgers to Utara just looks pretty good. I don't think Rodgers is a problem to play against Chelsea, but I'd rather have the Bournemouth man, and the fixtures are better afterwards as well, and Bournemouth will play in 29, and I'm probably not going to free hit that week. So I'm likely to move Rodgers on. The only thing that will stop that is if I get any indication that João Pedro is going to start against Southampton away, because if he is, I'll just play 3-4-3 and I don't need to make a transfer. I just got no hope that that will happen, and we're probably not going to find out. Unless Hertzler says something in the press conference that gives it away, I've probably got to bench him, which is really frustrating because it's such a good fixture, but that's just how it is right now. Salah captain will probably stick. I'd like to go against him because it's Man City, but I just think that Liverpool team will cause them problems. I think we should expect Man City to be a bit better going forward. I think with Gonzalez in midfield as well, that's really going to help. But Liverpool are just so good, and so is Salah. He's just been ridiculous this season. I probably got to captain him. My other options are in Mbeumo, Isak. I'm not sure how confident about that I am, so I'll probably stick the armband, keep the armband on Salah. In Mbeumo going nowhere, neither is Nwaneri. I only just bought him in. And then Watkins, Isak up front, more than fine. Like, I want Cunha soon, but I'm not in a rush to get him. And once my assistant manager runs out after game week 26, I'll get 1.5 million back. That gives me the money to go from João Pedro to Cunha, so I can just keep Watkins and Isak for a little bit longer. I don't think I need that money for anything else. Like, I'd like to have 2 Bournemouth midfielders, but having 1 plus Nwaneri and then Palmer, Salah and Mbeumo is also fine. On slot, I'm pretty sure I'm going to move him, even if I make the Rodgers to Utara move. So even if it's for a hit, I'm probably going to remove slot. I think he can get a draw minimum and he can definitely win that game. It's just the fact it's away. If it was at home, I'm pretty sure I would definitely be keeping him. But the away thing is putting me off. I think it was an easy decision to go for slot because he had back-to-back doubles. I did tell myself I wanted to go for a table bonus match at some point. So I think I'm going to move him on either to Arteta and play it safe, or I'm going to go for one of the table bonus games. There is something about that Leicester game. I don't know. Leicester versus Brentford, possibly. I don't know which I prefer out of Leicester, Brentford, or Ipswich Spurs. I almost see Ipswich as the stronger team, but I think Spurs... I know everyone kind of laughs at how they've done this year, Ange Postecoglou and stuff. I just think they're better than they've played recently. So I think I'll probably be on Palace like everyone else. I just think if you can get lucky with a win, it's worth so many points, like more than 16 points. That is huge. It's worth the hit. Like, if Slot only gets a draw against Man City, it's like 3-4 points, something like that. Like, if it's a score draw, for example, it's just not a huge amount. I think it's worth taking the risk. So I'm probably going to move him on. So that's my thoughts. If João Pedro is going to start, I just bench Rodgers and I move Slot for free. If not, I'm going to move Slot, and then it's whether or not to get rid of Rodgers for a hit. I mean, honestly, the way Chelsea play at the moment, I could just play Rodgers. But I kind of want to get the Bournemouth player in. And they're going to continue to rise in price as well, ahead of that blank in 29. So I think I'm sitting pretty decently this week. I'll talk about my final plans on Thursday in the team selection, my overall rank once the games are finished and stuff like that. If you enjoyed that video, make sure to give it a like, hit that subscribe button, rate 5 stars if you listen on podcast, and I'll catch you again soon.